Now you may have noticed on that door panel, sample rather, that we did, on the end grain of the ends of the doors, it was much darker than the face grain. End grain is typically like a bunch of straws. It's going to absorb anything you put on it, dye color, finish. But also, if you noticed, if you look back at the very beginning of the video, you'll see that the end grain was darker before we even started. So if you wanted to lighten that up, you would have to use something like wood bleach. And what wood bleach is, it's a pre-made bleach that you buy where you mix part A and part B together. Part A is sodium hydroxide lye, part B is hydrogen peroxide. You brush that on that end grain where it's very dark, allow it to dry, and a lot of times it'll take overnight for it to actually bleach the color out to where it lightens it up. Or you may say that's just too much work, but the first thing I do is show my client what it looks like with finish. If you just wipe it with water or acetone or alcohol, it'll absorb whatever you put on and it's going to show what it looks like in a finished state. You want to show people what it looks like at that point to where they know what to expect, and then you can either bleach the color out, you can sand it to a finer degree so it doesn't absorb as much as of the dye and or finish that you're applying. You could put the glue and water trick like we did before on that, just on the end grain, and prevent it from absorbing more of the finish and or color. So now we have our bristle brush that was pure natural bristles that we need to clean this brush. So how do you do that? So these first two buckets I have here are both acetone, and this is going to be a 3-bucket rinse. We're going to go acetone, and the last one I have down here I'll put up at the end is paint thinner. The reason I use acetone is because it will break down that varnish rather quickly, whereas if it started to dry, if it's really warm weather, the paint thinner is not going to redissolve it, soften it up, but the acetone will. So I pour just a small amount, tip the bucket, actually pushing this brush. Don't be afraid, really push it down into there and get plenty of that acetone, and then take the bristles like so and squeeze it, and you're getting that acetone back into the heel of the brush where typically everything wants to dry. Now we're going to take on the edge of the bucket, we're going to take a simple wire brush and gently wire brush this. Now if you go to the paint stores, the big box stores, they'll sell wire brushes, but the tines are spaced really far apart. That makes zero sense to me. These bristles are very fine. I want to use a brush like this. I'm not very aggressive with it. I'm gently brushing this down like so. On the edges as well. Dip it in again. I've got that finish loosened up. Now I need to get all that excess solvent out of there. This you can find at most paint stores, your big box stores will carry this. This is a brush and roller spinner. You take the brush, put it into the end of it, and you can spin out all of that excess solvent. So if you look at, you can see how dirty this wash is here. Watch what happens by the time you get to the second one. At the end, it's going to be much less dirty looking than that one is. Same thing. I'm taking that solvent, going down into the heel of the brush. Wire brush again. Like I say, I'm not being very aggressive with it, but I do want to loosen up any finish that may be on that brush. Run it back down to the heel again. Put it back into the brush spinner. Spin out that excess. Now, look at the difference between wash number 1 and wash number 2 already. So you can see how much cleaner it is after wash number 2 because we spun out all that excess material. Our third rinse is going to be paint thinner, because paint thinner is going to put some nice oils back into those bristles and make them much softer. You don't want to put a pure bristle brush into water. That will really damage it. There's nothing good to come out of doing that. I contacted the Pt2 company probably 15 years ago because I saw some guys doing that online where they were doing a final rinse of soap and water. I told him who I was. He got back to me and said, I don't know why they're professing doing this, but absolutely not. Paint thinner would be your final rinse. There again, using my wire brush. Now we have a brush that's ready to use again. And wash number 3 of the paint thinner. You can see I didn't put very much material in there because I just tipped the bucket and I don't require a lot. So what are you going to do with this dirty solvent now? If you have a shop, we put everything into a 55-gallon drum that gets recycled properly. You could put this into, say, a Pyrex dish, put it outside, keep it away from, obviously, your household pets, and let it evaporate, and that's perfectly legal to do. Ta-da!